Chapter 6. By the time I came home with my first semester progress report, I had become a completely normal 7th grader, or at least I was doing a good impersonation of one. Justin continued to lob insults at me in the hallway, but otherwise he left me alone. No one decided to step in and become a more active tormentor, which was a pleasant development. I made some other friends, but it was Alice I hung out with the most. She hardly ever asked me about my experiences, which I appreciated more than I could tell her, though once in a while she couldn't help herself. To her credit, it wasn't just to satisfy her own curiosity, but because she sensed that what had happened to me was still taking its toll. She obviously had issues of her own. I suspected her father's problem had to do with his service overseas, but Alice never spoke about it, and I somehow knew she didn't want me to ask. I guess we got along because we both had been hit pretty hard by life. Smelly still talked to me, insulted me, and complained about living inside my head, but would go for long periods of time without saying anything. Once I noticed it hadn't spoken in a couple of days, so I asked if it was all right. "Just reliving happier times," it told me. "Remembering some marvelous centuries without having to inhabit organic slime pustules as yourself, Zeke. It's sad, really, having to exist in such close proximity to you and your kind." "How's the suit coming?" I asked. "Slowly," it said. "Please pity me." Putting the suit on every day was becoming just a part of life. It was weird and awkward stepping into it, but once it was on and activated, I honestly didn't feel it at all. It was easy to forget I was walking around in a rubber suit hardwired with alien technology, or at least human technology in an alien configuration. One day we were sitting outside during lunch period, and Alice said to me, "What's her name?" I hadn't said anything to Alice about Tamret. I wasn't prepared to say her name out loud. That would make it real. And whatever Tamret was going through was horrible. I couldn't help her until Smelly got the suit working. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. "I'm talking about how you're walking around with a dog-eared copy of The Fault in Our Stars. And those look like tear stains on the cover? There's gotta be a girl you left behind, right?" She gestured vaguely upward. When I didn't say anything, she let it go, for which I was grateful. Alice and I were working on a joint project for English class on Tom Sawyer when my phone chimed. Usually, whenever anyone called or sent a text, I feared the worst, but this time I was distracted, and the message caught me entirely by surprise. I stared at it, feeling the cold stab of fear. It had happened. The thing I dreaded most had happened. "Can you pick up a gallon of milk on the way home? Not at the usual place." Alice must have seen me staring at my phone like it was a severed hand that had just dropped into my lap. "What's the big deal?" I said nothing for a long moment. Then I turned to her. "I have to get out of here." "It doesn't say the milk is an emergency." I stood up and started putting things in my book bag. I had no idea where I was going to go, but I couldn't go home. Alice put a hand on my shoulder and turned me to face her. "Zeke, what is this?" "It's code," I said, hearing the robotic tone in my own voice. "They're coming for me." When we'd set this one up, I'd laughed at my mom. Neither of us drank much milk, and we never bought more than half a gallon, but when I'd asked her what she'd text if she really needed me to get milk, she smiled. "I won't politely ask," she said. "I'll just tell you to get it, and you'll obey like a good son." This code meant that people were at the house or coming to it, and they meant to take me away. The code meant run. I didn't know if it was government agents or aliens, and we probably should have worked that out, but now it was too late. "Who's after you?" Alice demanded. "I'm not sure, but whoever it is will know who I associate with, or they'll figure it out. They'll come looking for me here, and I need to be gone before that happens." Alice let me finish packing my things. She went over to the computer and clicked on the New York Times webpage. She checked the pages for the local news channels and CNN. There were no major stories, and finally she sighed as if she had no choice, and clicked onto one of the UFO sites she used to visit. There she found the screaming headline, "Multiple UFO sightings over western USA." I need to get away from here," I said. "Away from where?" I swallowed hard. Earth. I scanned the article as quickly as I could. Several people had reported seeing saucer-shaped UFOs in Kansas, Colorado, and Nebraska. When I first saw the headline, some part of me dared to hope that it was Urch, or Captain Quassel, or Dr. Roop, come to get me and help me rescue Tamret, but now there was no doubt only the Fads had saucer-shaped ships. They were my enemies, the alien who still blamed me for destroying a cruiser that was trying to blow up the ship I happened to have been on at the time. I could not let them get me, and I couldn't let them use the people I cared about against me. The only way to make sure that didn't happen was to escape their grasp. That meant getting off planet. Smelly, I haven't checked in a few days. How are things doing with the suit? Alice looked at me like I'd lost my mind, but I held up a hand to indicate I needed quiet. Integration with the suit functions proceeds apace, you big whiner. I don't need it to proceed apace, I said. I need it to find me a working spaceship. Certain functions appear to be fully operational, but I am having trouble getting the sensory data to collate and sync. It may require several more weeks. I don't have several more weeks. I need a ship. I can discern that you have strong feelings on the subject, it said, because you are becoming irritatingly shrill, but shouting at me won't help. It rarely does. I turned to Alice. I may have neglected to mention I've got an artificial intelligence living in my head that was created millions of years ago by precursor aliens, but now, there it is. I was not created, Smelly seemed to shout. I was formed by the natural conglomeration of semi-autonomous algorithmic articulations, gestured into non-existence by the juxtaposition of multiple and contradictory quantum utterances. All right, fine, I said. Tell it, I can't have a primitive animal thing believing I'm some sort of program created by a biological mass of pulsating ooze. It's humiliating. I sighed. It wants you to know it was not made. It's some kind of natural occurring quantum whatever. Okay, Smelly? Is that good enough for you? Alice, I realized, was staring at me like I was a raving lunatic, which wasn't even remotely unreasonable. I know I probably seem crazy right now, but I'm not, which is probably a bad way to say goodbye to someone, but I need to get out of here before you get caught up in all of my problems. I figured that if Alice didn't know where I was going, she couldn't tell anyone. Of course, I didn't know where I was going either. My mother and I had established a couple of meet-up places, and her code was supposed to tell me which one to go to. The not at the usual place part of the message meant that our meeting spots had been compromised, or she felt she was being watched too closely for her to join me. All of which meant I was now entirely on my own. I needed to be long gone before the Fads showed up and started shooting. Ideally, I would get off planet today, but if my suit wasn't ready, I was going to have to come up with an alternative. Plan B, I figured, would be hide for a few weeks until the suit did work. Then Smelly and I would find a former ship, assuming one actually existed. I tried not to think about all the objections I'd raised when he first proposed the plan. Then it had just been a neat idea, but now it was necessary if I was going to survive and keep my mother and Alice out of the crossfire. I don't think you're crazy. I guess an alien AI named Stinky isn't any less believable than anything else. Smelly, I said, and thanks. So where will you go? I don't know, I told her, trying not to deal with the enormity of what I was facing. If I couldn't go to any of the meeting points my mother and I had arranged, I really had no idea what I was going to do. Right now the main thing is I have to get away from anyone who knows me. I'll go with you. She said it like she'd agreed to walk to the store to buy me a soda. Without missing a beat, she picked up a backpack and began shoving things inside. A hairbrush, shirts, underwear. She moved one of her books from the shelf, grabbed an envelope stuffed with money, and shoved it in with the rest of her stuff. She must have seen me looking at her in disbelief. What? She said. You don't have emergency money stashed away? As it happened, I kept emergency money on me at all times. It was another precaution my mother and I had come up with, but that wasn't the point. I'm not convinced you've been listening, I said. You cannot come with me. What did you do, Zeke? Are you like a cosmic criminal or something? As a matter of fact, there are beings who think that's exactly what I am, I told her. I made a lot of powerful beings, a lot of bad, powerful beings, angry, but only because I was trying to do the right thing. I paused, hating how inept that sounded. You know what? I didn't try to do the right thing. My friends and I did the right thing. Now there are beings who want to punish me because I didn't let them get away with being evil. I'll take my lumps, but I'm not going to let other people suffer, so if anyone comes asking, please don't lie to them. Tell them I was here, I told you nothing, and now I'm gone. I'm going with you. Her voice was cold and resolute. She slung her hastily filled backpack over her shoulder. I don't think you're listening to me. I don't think you're listening to me, she said. I can help you. Help me with what? I heard you talking to your AI about a ship. I'm wearing something that's supposed to help me find a hidden one, but it's not working. It may not be working right for weeks. I don't know how long I'm going to be on the run, and as long as you're with me, you'll be in real danger, like life-threatening, subject to torture, danger. You can't come. I can because you need me. For what? She grinned. That machine in your head says it can help you find a spaceship in a few weeks? Well, I know where you can find one right now. I am monitoring this meatbag's vital signs, Smelly said, and it does not appear to be lying. I think you should listen to what it has to say. I looked up and saw a dark sedan with tinted windows coming down the street. It didn't necessarily mean anything. The street was busy enough that several cars passed by each minute. But even so, I had no way of knowing if it was a car full of people or aliens looking for me. I had to decide right then. It was wrong to get Alice involved, but if she could somehow lead me to a working spaceship, I didn't see that I had much of a choice. I looked at her. Do you really know where I can find a ship? She met my gaze. I really do. I let out a breath. Okay then. She turned from me and ran back into the house. Through the open door, I saw her give her dad a hug. He hardly seemed to notice it. She whispered something in his ear, gave him a kiss on the cheek, and then turned away, keeping her eyes down. She ran the palm of her hand along the side of her face, adjusted her glasses, slung her backpack over her shoulder, and stepped out of her house. Let's go, she said. She was smiling, but it looked forced.